Chosen one. There is something your body has already known for a long time. Something your mind was never given the right words for. A quiet, persistent sense, not quite longing and not quite restlessness, that the life you have been living is a size too small for what you actually carry. You have tried to reason with this feeling. You called it pride. You told yourself it was delusion, that you were being ungrateful, that you needed to just accept things and move on. But it came back. It always came back. Because it is not arrogance, it is memory. The memory of a nature that was never designed to fit inside ordinary walls. Chosen one, here is what most people were never told. A lost heir does not feel at home in the wrong kingdom, not because there is something wrong with them, but because their frequency does not match the frequency of the place they were placed in. You are not the problem, you are the proof that something royal runs through you, something ancient, something with roots deeper than your understanding of your own history. And today, that something is waking up, not for the first time. For the first time, with full recognition. Before we go any further, I want to tell you what is in this message for you, because I do not want you to miss it. By the time this is over, you are going to understand the 5 specific signs that mark you as a displaced heir. You are going to understand why your wilderness was not punishment, but a form of precision formation that comfort could never have produced. You are going to hear your royal identity named in specific, recognizable terms that will make something click inside you. And at the end of part 2, there is a practical activation you can use right now to begin walking as who you actually are. Stay with me. This is not a casual message. Let me begin with something most people never talk about honestly. There is a specific kind of loneliness that does not come from having no one around you. It is the loneliness of being surrounded by people and still feeling foreign. It is the experience of being in a conversation, saying the right things, being present, and yet feeling somewhere beneath it all like you are watching from behind a thin wall of glass. Like you are almost here, but not entirely. You know this feeling, and for years you may have thought something was broken in you because of it. But here is what I want you to see today. There is a difference between a person who does not belong because they have not yet found their people, and a person who does not belong because they were placed in the wrong kingdom entirely. One is a social problem. The other is a frequency problem. And the lost heir has a frequency problem. Here are the 5 signs that you are not just someone who struggles. The first sign is this. You have always felt more than you could explain, not just sadness or joy, but layers of things, impressions, undercurrents in a room, things that were unsaid but present. You pick up what others put down without noticing. And for most of your life, the world around you did not have a category for this. So you learned to hide it, to filter it, to turn down the volume on what you were receiving. But the signal was always real. The second sign is that you process pain differently. When something breaks you, it does not break you the way it breaks others. It goes deeper, and it also transforms differently. People around you may have recovered faster, moved on sooner, seemed lighter after the same kind of loss. You carried it longer. But what came out of you after carrying it, what you eventually understood and became because of it, was something no shortcut could have produced. The third sign is that even the people who love you most have never quite been able to fully see you. They love the version of you they can understand. But there is a part of you, the deepest, most essential part, that has lived somewhat unseen, not rejected, just too layered for the ordinary eye to hold. The fourth sign is this. You have a sensitivity to injustice and brokenness that feels almost physical. When you see someone overlooked, when you sense a system grinding someone down, something inside you responds with more than sympathy. It responds with something that feels like responsibility, like this is connected to why you are here. And the fifth sign is the most important one. Your greatest struggles have not been random. They have clustered around the exact areas most directly connected to your assignment. The things you were meant to carry and transform, those are the things that were attacked earliest and hardest. That is not coincidence, that is targeting, and you only get targeted in the areas where you carry genuine threat to what wants to stay unchanged. These are not character flaws. They are royal indicators. So the question becomes, if these signs are real, if you recognize yourself in them, then the question is not, what is wrong with you? The question is, what is so right about you that ordinary life has never been able to fully contain it? And that question leads us to the first revelation. The wilderness was not exile. The long season you have been in, the years of confusion, delay, isolation, the doors that closed without explanation, the relationships that ended in ways you could not fully understand. None of that was punishment. None of it was abandonment. It was the formation ground. And it was exclusive to heirs. Think about this. The most significant figures in the lineage of greatness were never formed in palaces. They were formed outside of them. Joseph was not made into the person he needed to become in his father's house. He was made in a pit, in a prison, in years of carrying an assignment that had no visible evidence of ever arriving. Everything was taken from him. His position, his freedom, his name in the eyes of others. And in that long, dark, underground season, something was being built that could not have been built in comfort, a depth of character, a capacity for mercy toward the people who would one day need his forgiveness, a wisdom that could not have come from reading about suffering. It had to be lived. Esther did not know, when she was living an ordinary and hidden life, that her hiddenness was strategic. She did not know she was being positioned, not abandoned. The moment of her revealing came exactly when it needed to, and her years of learning quietly, understanding the terrain, those years were the reason she could step into the moment with any real authority at all. This is the pattern. It has repeated across every tradition, every lineage of greatness, every story of royal restoration that has ever been recorded. Before the revealing, there is the hiding. Before the coronation, there is the confusion. The chrysalis is closed from the outside precisely because transformation cannot happen while it is being watched. You have been in the chrysalis, and here is what I need you to understand about that. The cocoon does not feel like preparation. It feels like suffocation. It feels like stillness when everything in you is screaming for movement. It feels like being buried when every instinct says you should be growing. But the seed does not know it is becoming a tree. In the dark, pressed by soil on every side, it only knows pressure and narrow space and the absence of light. And then, at the right moment, in the right season, something inside it activates. Not because the conditions finally became easy, because the root work was finally complete. Your root work has been going deep. The wilderness was not wasted. Every layer of false identity that fell away, every version of yourself you tried on and had to release because it was not true, that stripping was not loss, it was excavation. The removal of everything that was not actually you, so that what remained could stand under the weight of what is coming. The false identity had to go. The version of you that was built to please, the self that measured its worth by what other people thought, the smaller story you told yourself so the pain would make sense, all of it had to be left behind. Not because it was worthless, because it was not yours. And what is yours, chosen one, is ancient, and it is royal, and it is specific. Which brings us to the second revelation. You are not the only one this has happened to, and the fact that you are not the only one is not a comfort to minimize your experience. It is evidence that you are part of a pattern so consistent, so precise, so recognizable across time and tradition that it cannot be coincidence. Every lineage of genuine greatness follows the same arc. Loss, displacement, preparation, revelation. The seed is buried, the chrysalis closes, the wanderer leaves the known. And then, at the appointed time, the hidden one is revealed. Joseph went from the pit to the palace, not in spite of the pit. but because of what the pit produced in him. Esther was revealed, not in spite of her quiet years, but because those quiet years made her ready. The wanderer. In every tradition that has ever tried to hold this archetype, the one who left the familiar and spent years without a clear destination, always discovers that the wandering itself was the formation. The roads that seemed to go nowhere were building something. The silence that seemed empty was full. This is your pattern, and the end of the pattern is always the same. The hidden one is revealed. The buried seed becomes the tree. The wanderer comes home. Now, before I tell you the third revelation, the one that will name your specific royal identity, I want to share something with you that connects directly to what we have been talking about. For years, neuroscientists have been studying what actually happens in the brain during this kind of deep transformation. What happens when someone who has been living far below their true capacity begins to awaken? And what they found is remarkable. There is a specific brainwave frequency called the gamma wave. Scientists studying the brains of young children before the world shapes them and names them and tells them who they are, found that these children operate at high levels of gamma activity. Gamma is the frequency of heightened intuition, rapid clarity, and what many people describe as a flow state, where everything works, where the right thoughts arrive at the right time, where intention and action seem to move together without resistance. Dr. Robert Lake, a neuroscientist with 34 years of research backed by studies from MIT, Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, Berkeley, Columbia, and the Einstein Center in Berlin, spent years tracking what he called the decline effect, the measurable, systematic shutdown of gamma activity that happens in most people somewhere around the age of 7. Before that age, gamma is alive and abundant. After it, for most people, it fades. The modern world, the education systems, the pressure, the noise, all of it creates conditions that slowly suppress the very frequency that was most natural to us when we first arrived here. He called gamma the God-given brainwave, and he spent years developing a way to reactivate it. What he created is a 7-minute audio track that uses brain entrainment technology, precise sound frequencies that guide the brain back into gamma activity. Not meditation, which requires months of practice to produce measurable effects. Not biofeedback therapy, which traditionally costs around $300 per session or up to $7,000 for home equipment. This is a 7-minute audio experience through headphones, eyes closed, and the brain begins to remember the frequency it was always designed to operate in. It is called the Genius Song. Over 18,000 people have used it. The original price Dr. Lake set was $49. But because his intention has always been to reach the people who actually need this, not only those who can afford premium wellness options, for those who receive this specific message, the price is $39. That price is not available anywhere else, not on Amazon, not through any other source. I want to be honest with you about this, because honesty matters more to me than anything else. This is a tool. It is not a miracle. It will not do the inner work for you. But for someone who has been living in a long suppression season, for someone whose royal frequency has been turned down by years of wrong environments and wrong definitions of self, this is a real and practical way to begin tuning back to the signal that was always yours. Included with it are 4 bonuses at no extra cost. An audio track designed to help children activate their focus and confidence. A foundational book that inspired the film The Secret, focused on practical principles rather than theory. A guided visualization across 4 areas of life. And an infographic of the 5 most important habits for building the life that matches who you actually are. Everything backed by a full money-back guarantee. No conditions, no limit on how many times you use it first. One thing I need to say clearly. There are counterfeit products circulating under the name Genius Song. They are ordinary audio files with none of the brain entrainment technology embedded in them. They produce no measurable effect. The only way to receive the actual product with the full technology, all 4 bonuses, and the guarantee is through the link I have placed in the description and the pinned comment of this message. Do not search for it anywhere else. If you feel called to explore this, the link is there when you are ready. Now, let us continue. Because the third revelation, the one that names your specific royal identity, that is what part 2 is built around. And it is waiting for you there. Chosen one, welcome back. In part 1, we looked at the condition of the displaced air, the 5 signs, the wilderness, and the pattern that has repeated across history. Now we go deeper. Because knowing the pattern is one thing. Knowing your specific place in the pattern is something entirely different. There is a reason the royal household has different roles within it. Not every heir carries the same assignment. Not every member of the lineage is formed in the same way or sent to the same place. The household needs different gifts, different expressions, different kinds of light. And today I want to name 5 of the specific archetypes I see in chosen ones. As I describe each one, pay attention, not with your mind but with something deeper. Pay attention to which ones produce recognition rather than just information. Because recognition is the body confirming what it already knows. The first is the seer. The seer is the one who perceives what others cannot. Not in dramatic visions, not in supernatural performance, but in the quiet, constant, low-level awareness of what is really happening beneath the surface of things. The seer walks into a room and feels what the room is holding before anyone speaks. The seer looks at a person and senses something about them that the person themselves has not yet articulated. For most of your life, you may have been told this sensitivity is anxiety, that you are overthinking, that you feel too much. But I want you to hear this clearly. Your sensitivity is not a wound. It is sight, and sight is a royal function. The second archetype is the light bearer. The light bearer does not announce themselves. They do not need to. There is something about their presence that changes the temperature of a room, that creates a quality of safety and clarity others cannot quite explain. People open up to the light bearer. Strangers tell them things they have never told anyone. People who have been closed for years find something cracking open in the presence of the light bearer. You may have experienced this your whole life without having a word for it. You carry something that illuminates, not by trying, by being. The third archetype is the cycle breaker. The cycle breaker was placed at a specific point in a lineage of patterns that needed to end. Generational patterns, family patterns, patterns of silence, of self-abandonment, of repeated collapse at the threshold of breakthrough. The cycle breaker is the one who stops the repetition. Not by fighting it dramatically, but by becoming something the pattern has never encountered before. A new frequency inside an old system. You may have spent years wondering why your life felt so much heavier than your peers, why you were fighting battles they did not seem to have to fight. It is because you were not just fighting for yourself. You were ending something for everyone who comes after you. The fourth is the pioneer. The pioneer goes first, into the unknown, into the uncharted, into the territory that has no map, because no one has been there before, and going first is costly. The pioneer pays a price that others will be spared, because the path will exist by the time they arrive. The pioneer is often misunderstood in their own time, because what they are doing does not fit any existing category. But they are not confused. They are ahead, and there is a difference. The fifth archetype, and this one I want to say carefully, is the wounded healer. The wounded healer is the one whose most specific, most personal, most private pain is also their most precise medicine. The thing that broke them is the exact thing that qualifies them. The loss they survived, the abandonment they endured, the failure they lived through, all of it becomes, in the right season, a language that others in the same darkness can hear and recognize. The wounded healer does not get to skip the wound. The wound is the credential, and what comes through the healed wound is not information. It is transmission. Chosen one, you may recognize more than one of these. Most people who carry a genuine royal identity carry two or three. That is not confusion. That is complexity. And complexity is appropriate to the size of the assignment. But here is where I need to slow down, because knowing your royal identity is not the same as walking in it. And the gap between knowing and walking is where most lost heirs spend the most frustrating years of their lives. That gap has a name. It is called the unworthiness belief. Here is how it sounds. You feel the calling. You sense the royal frequency. You have moments where it all makes sense, where you can see clearly who you are and what you carry and what you are for. And then something quieter than a shout but more persistent than an alarm begins, and it says, "Who do you think you are? Who gave you permission to claim this?" There are people more qualified, more healed, more prepared. There are people who have not made the mistakes you have made, who do not carry the history you carry. Maybe this royal language is just a story you are telling yourself to feel better. You know that voice. That voice is not wisdom. That voice is not discernment. That voice is the residue of years of living in a kingdom that was never designed to hold what you carry. It is the echo of every environment that handed you a definition of yourself too small for the truth. It is the internalized voice of the wrong kingdom. And you have been carrying it so long you started to believe it belongs to you. It does not belong to you. There is also something underneath the unworthiness, belief, that I want to name honestly. There is a strange comfort in the smaller story. The smaller story is familiar. It does not require anything terrifying. It does not ask you to stand in rooms that feel too large for you, to speak truths that might not be received, to carry a calling that could cost you everything you used to be. The smaller story is safe. And the part of you that has been through real pain, the part that is genuinely tired, that part has been holding on to the smaller story not because it is true, but because it feels survivable. I understand that, and I am not going to shame it. But I also need to tell you this. The people who needed your specific light, the ones who needed the seer's perception to help them see what they could not see on their own, the ones who needed the wounded healer's language to find words for their own darkness, the ones who needed the cycle breaker to demonstrate that the pattern could actually end, those people have been waiting. And some of them stopped waiting, not because you failed them deliberately, because you were waiting for a permission that was never going to come from outside of you, which brings us to the revelation that changes everything. Chosen one, here it is. You were never truly lost. I need to say that again, and I need you to let it land somewhere real inside you. You were never truly lost. Lost implies that something went wrong, that there was a wrong turn, an accident, a failure in the navigation. But that is not what happened. What happened was a strategic displacement, a purposeful formation season, a period of preparation that looked like abandonment and felt like exile, but was, in fact, the most precise training available for the assignment that was always yours, every door that closed. Do you understand what that actually was? That was routing. Every relationship that ended without the explanation you deserved, that was clearing. Every season of waiting that felt like it would never lift, that was root work. Every version of yourself that you tried on and had to release because it was not quite true, that was excavation. The removal of everything that was never yours to begin with, so that what remained, what truly remained, could stand under the weight of what is coming. You were not being punished. You were being precision formed. Think about Joseph in that pit. He did not know he was in preparation. He only knew the darkness and the injustice and the silence of something that felt like being forgotten. But from the pit to the palace, there was not a single wasted day, not a single wasted tear. Every moment was producing something in him that could not have been produced any other way. The one who would feed nations during a famine had to become someone who had himself survived famine, who had been stripped of everything, who had learned that identity does not depend on circumstance. Think about the wanderer. In every tradition that has ever tried to hold this archetype, the one who left the familiar and walked through years of not quite arriving, the wandering itself was the formation. The people the wanderer would eventually serve needed to be led by someone who had been in the wilderness, who had found the way not by reading a map but by learning the terrain with their own feet. The seed does not stay buried forever, and neither do you. The royal family, the lineage you belong to, the ancient line of seers and light-bearers and cycle breakers and pioneers and wounded healers who came before you, they never stopped knowing your name. The universe never lost your address. What was lost was your own recognition of who you are, and that recognition is happening right now. What was underground is rising. What was hidden is being revealed. What was displaced is coming home. Not to a palace built by someone else's hands, to the truth of who you have always been, and that truth is this. You are the lost child of a royal family, not of this world's making, a different kind of royalty, the kind that is measured not in power over others but in the depth of service for them, the kind that is built not in comfort but in the fire, the kind that does not wear a crown others can see, but carries an authority that those who need it can feel the moment you walk into the room. This is your name. You have always carried it. Today, you are finally hearing it spoken out loud. So now, I want to give you 3 practical things you can begin right now, not tomorrow, not after you feel more ready. Right now, wherever you are. The first practice is this. Every morning, before the world gets to speak first, before the noise begins, you speak first. Not out loud if that is not comfortable. Quietly, internally, in the space that belongs only to you. Say 3 things, not as wishes, but as declarations of what is already true. The first, I carry an assignment that is specific and irreplaceable. The second, the wilderness formed me, it did not break me. The third, someone is waiting for the exact light that only I carry. Say them slowly. Notice which one produces the most resistance in your chest, because the one that meets the most resistance is usually the one that is most true and most needed. The second practice is discernment, because here is what can happen to a lost heir who has just found their name. The royal calling and the voice of ego can sometimes sound similar at first, but the difference is clear when you look carefully. The royal calling, when it is real, always includes something larger than yourself. It moves toward people. It produces in you a desire to give, to serve, to bring something to others. The voice of ego, dressed up in royal language, tends to pull inward. It elevates the self above the room. It produces spiritual pride rather than spiritual generosity. So when something comes to you that feels like calling, ask one simple question. Does this include others, or does it only serve me? The answer will tell you what you need to know. And the third practice is alignment in small choices. You do not need the full map. You do not need to see the entire road before you take the next step. The tree does not force itself up all at once. It grows toward light, one ring at a time. So begin asking, with every choice that comes to you, does this align with who I now know myself to be? Not who I was, not who the wrong kingdom told me I was, who I actually am. That single question, applied consistently, will begin to redirect everything. Now I want to close this message with something that feels right for where we are. We have come a long way together. You arrived here carrying something you had no language for, a feeling of displacement, of being formed in ways that felt like loss, of carrying something the world around you could never quite see. And I want to honor that journey before we close. What I want to offer you now is not a complicated exercise. It is something you can receive exactly where you are, whatever position you are in, however tired you are. Just take one breath, one real slow breath in, and let it out completely. And as you release it, let the smaller story go with it, just for this moment. You do not have to carry it into what comes next. Receive this. May the one who was buried be recognized for what they were becoming in the dark. May the one who wandered be honored for every mile that prepared them. May the one who was displaced be welcomed home, not to a place they have never been, but to the truth of who they have always been. May the seer see clearly from this day forward. May the light-bearer stop dimming themselves in rooms that made them feel too bright. May the cycle breaker find the freedom of knowing the pattern ends with them. May the pioneer walk forward without waiting for a permission that was always already theirs. And may the wounded healer allow their own wound to finally begin to heal, knowing that their healing is not a retreat from their assignment. It is the fulfillment of it. Chosen one, you are not the lost child anymore. You are the found heir. The palace did not change. You did. And the version of you walking forward from this moment carries something different than the version that arrived here. Not because I gave it to you, because you always had it. And today, for the first time, you heard it called by its real name. The seed is no longer in the ground. The season has changed. What was buried is rising. Go. And for those who felt something stir today, for those whose royal frequency feels like it is beginning to wake at a level deeper than just understanding, I have left something in the description and the pinned comment below. It will be there when you are ready.